Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have more news coming out of the state of Tasmania around the two new proposed stadiums for the Tasmania Devils coming into the AFL in the year 2028. Of course, the new stadium in Hobart at Macquarie Point, a 23,000 seat stadium that is planned to be built by the Liberal government in Tasmania. That is, of course, the translucent roof. You do have the cost of around $775 million. It is a very ambitious project. It will be quite a unique stadium when it comes to Australia. And we do also have the proposed redevelopment of Utah's stadium in Launceston, of course, York Park. It isn't talked about as much, but it is slated for a $130 million redevelopment. It will be hosting 4 Tasmania Devils games from 2028. Of course, that is a stadium where we do have Hawthorn playing 4 games a year at the present time in the AFL. And while that redevelopment hasn't been talked about as much, it has been in the works for quite a number of years. There is funding from both the Australian and Tasmanian governments for that project. The plan is going to be to just upgrade a lot of the facilities. They are adding new coaching boxes, new media facilities, a new grandstand on the outer side, also a new grandstand on the western side where the media and coaching facilities will be located. There will be some increased capacity as well, and just a general upgrade to the ground to make it more suitable for a full-time AFL team in the state of Tasmania. But there has been a big issue that has come to light this week where the Launceston City Council had to vote on whether they would remove an old elm tree for the new stand. The proposal had this tree getting cut down to expand the stadium, and they were going to utilise the wood from the tree in various areas within the stadium, maybe bars, maybe some sort of artwork design. But the vote did go before the City Council, and the motion was ultimately split 5-5. So the proposal failed to be passed. And now the developer of the stadium, the Department of State Growth, is going to need to appeal the decision to the Tasmanian Civil and Administrative Tribunal for a result. Now, apparently this tree is around 17 metres tall. It is 70 to 80 years old. And we have had an arborist come out and say the tree is generally in good shape. And apparently elm tree species are considered at risk because of a fungal disease that has had devastating consequences for populations of the tree. They're saying this disease has not yet been located in Australia, but they are wanting to preserve this species. We have had some people come out from the Australian Garden History Society saying that this tree creates a greening canopy and that the Launceston City Council should place a very high priority for its greening urban strategy. The tree is part of Launceston's history, they say. Now, obviously, they didn't know about this tree when they were putting the application together. They said they were going to remove the tree, obviously reuse the timber, and also plant 5 mature elm trees in the area to replace the tree. But obviously, given the tree is 70 to 80 years old, it is considered by these people very important for the area. And that decision now will go before the tribunal to come to a decision. And you can see here the new Centre West stand. That is the proposal where the media facilities will be housed, where the coaching boxes will be housed. That is expanding outwards in terms of depth. So the tree would be in the path of that stand, so that is why it does have to go. We do also have a new eastern stand to be built as part of this redevelopment. They are going to be filling in some of the gaps in terms of the seating in the 2-tiered stand in the pocket, and just some general updates in terms of the facilities around the stadium. We do have light tower upgrades as well. Overall, this funding of $130 million was split $65 million each between the Tasmanian and federal governments. They are increasing the capacity by around 2,000 seats and bringing the facilities up to standard. They are hoping to get this done by 2027, the year before the Tasmanian Devils come into the AFL. So maybe in those first year or two when the Macquarie Point Stadium isn't ready, they will be playing more games in Launceston potentially, but the long-term plan is for 4 games a year there. And to make matters worse, when we look at the Macquarie Point Stadium in Hobart, obviously this has been controversial from from day one when it was announced. We have had people coming out and saying you need to build housing. The Tasmanian economy can't afford 700 million plus pumped into a stadium. Of course, the Tasmanian government only contributing, I believe, 345 million or thereabouts for this. The balance will come from the federal government, from the AFL, and from the private sector. And there has been a concern from the RSL and also the Greens, where the cenotaph, which is a war memorial located in the Macquarie Point area, they are saying it would be obstructed by the stadium. It would remove the views from and of the cenotaph, and it would just disrupt the sort of ambience and the vibe of the area. Now, you could argue the NIMBYs are just jumping on sort of any reason to block this. We did have Labor coming out and supporting the stadium, saying it would create jobs for Tasmanians. They initially opposed it, but of course the Liberal Party won the state election earlier this year. And now it really is just the Greens in terms of political parties who are against this. They have joined forces with the RSL. They are saying we want this stadium to be built at what is being dubbed the Macquarie Point 2.0 area, a little bit away from the current proposed site of the stadium. And it is kind of interesting when you have the Greens joining forces with the RSL in terms of that. Normally they wouldn't be, I guess, aligned to a military focused organisation, but in this instance they are both against this. And in the last week or so, we have now got the Tasmania Symphony Orchestra coming out and saying this is a terrible location for the stadium. Apparently there is a purpose-built concert hall for the symphony orchestra located around 170 metres from the perimeter of the stadium site. And they're saying it is going to compromise our state concert hall, our cenotaph, and our war memorial. And it is also going to ruin the famous maritime heritage of our waterfront. And their argument is that the noise generated from the crowd at the stadium, from presumably music and other things that are going to be coming from the stadium during events, is going to ruin the acoustics and the sound of the orchestra when that is on. Seems like a bit of a stretch because, of course, orchestras playing in an indoor environment. It is set up for internal acoustics, and they have submitted a noise and vibration assessment to the government, and they're saying it has no governing policy related to noise emissions from stadia, including concerts and sporting events. We've exhausted our official options, and now we're asking the Tasmanian community to stand with us in calling for a better option for our new stadium. And they've also come out and said we want this Stadium 2.0 to be built, which is off to the side of the existing Macquarie Point. It would be an artificial waterfront peninsula, and it would move the stadium further away from the CBD. You do have the buffer of the cenotaph and the surrounding parklands between the city and the stadium. You also wouldn't have to remove the goods shed, which is a heritage listed shed on the Macquarie Point site. The current plan is for that to be turned into a bar area connected to the stadium. A few weeks ago, we did have the cost blowout of $60 million. The stadium initially saying it would cost $715 million. They are saying now $775 million. I do believe this will cost over $1 billion when you just compare it to some of the other stadiums that have been built in Australia. You do obviously have the roof. You do also have probably higher construction costs in Tasmania. And while the Stadium 1.0 does now have support across both the Liberal and Labor parties in Tasmania and also the Australian federal government, it seems like the NIMBYs, the people who don't want this thing getting built, really are joining forces. We have also had some Hobart City Council members come out and say we don't want this. And really they're just trying to throw anything at this that will stick. The application for the original stadium has been submitted earlier this month. They do have up to 12 months before it is officially approved. They did get it classified under the project of state significance as well. But it is interesting to see how hard some people are pushing for both Hobart and Launceston not to proceed with their stadium projects. And there is always going to be an element of doubt about this Tasmania team, about these stadiums, until shovels are in the ground, until foundations are being poured. And until that point, we are going to have people saying, will this team and these projects actually happen? Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.